Okay, it's Roy, CRR News and Clues, working on replacing a pinion seal in an Eaton Fuller front differential housing on a 1996 FLD 120 Freightliner. I want to point out some little tips here that may help folks. I've already cleaned this mess. There was grime in here that really shouldn't be. Right here is a location for the oil to flow through. Comes through the bearing and flows back through there, or vice versa. Got to make sure the splines are good on the shaft. First thing, of course, I had to do on this one, I used a 2 and 3/16 inch socket. I'm pretty sure. Yes. Here, these are 12-point nuts on that. Bolt heads. That I highly recommend to use a 12-point impact socket. What do we got here? That's what I thought. 1/2 inch. Probably can't see that, but impact socket. The chrome ones will often bust if they're too tight. Those, of course, need to not be over tightened when they're put back together. Need to check on the torque specs. Those two straps get pulled off of the U-joint. You see, I've got it held up here with a ratchet strap that's hooked to either side of the frame so it don't knock my head off. Take it down, check the U-joints themselves, make sure there's no lines in there, grooves from the little rollers having cut into it. This is a new U-joint already. Check the side-to-side slack, rotational slack inside all of your different sockets. If the joint can move sideways, whether it's up mounted in place and you rotate it, or like I'm moving it now. Watch here. Use a pointer. I'm too filthy to grab a light. Different light, but right in here. Make sure the other U-joint cap, like this one, does not move side to side or anything inside this yoke. If it can, it's because the weld in the center of here has been broke loose. This cap is supposed to be welded right here in the center. And if it's broke loose, normally it is because there's excess slack in the yoke, which this does seem to have that situation, which I believe was reported before someone else put 2 new U-joints and supposedly balanced this drive shaft. And personally, I think the caps were probably fine, and the main cross shaft of the U-joint was probably okay still. There was probably a problem here because of this, because I've already seen that problem back here on this one. I had to replace that U-joint, and sure enough, the brand new one slid by hand into the yoke instead of having to press or tap it in. Okay, next thing, this yoke obviously was up on that shaft. Normally, you need to put a crossbar type puller that'll push on the tip into the shaft here. That's part of the reason why there's that inset, so you can have a puller centered right there to push on it. I don't have one specific for these, but a nice like 8-inch long snap-on puller for other purposes run through there with those 2 caps bolted back on it, or maybe some spare old ones so there's no chance of damaging those bolts or straps there, can be used to pull this off the shaft. I was able to just wiggle it and pull it off by hand, which tells me there could be wear on these splines. The shaft here, the splines look pretty good. I stuck the yoke back on and wiggled it. It does not seem to have any rotational slack, but yet the splines here are fairly narrow. If they've got excess wear, they can even get sharp. So be careful when you check, look visually first. But if it's like that, it's junk. Get another one. Other thing that's very important to check, right here's that seal surface. I have not cleaned this up yet, obviously. Clean it off, run the finger across it, and feel if it's got a groove down in it from the seal. If your splines are good, but the seal surface is not, you can find the original diameter or dimensions. You can get a speedy sleeve through a truck parts or auto parts store that'll fit right on there. It's got a little metal can, looks like a darn tuna can, that you'll use to drive it into place. And oftentimes before we put one, we might put a little tiny thin bead of silicone here and then knock it on so that and then that cap, it'll let it go all the way, stop. You'll want to pull it off, check once in a while. This doesn't need it, so I will not be showing that procedure. I won't be putting one. The sleeve was, here we go, right up in here. Sometimes you've got to pull them out with a puller. What I did, this is my only heel bar that would fit in between, but it was too tight. So I took a little chisel, I made sure to sharpen it on the sander, so nice have a fine edge, and just knocked it in between all the way around the bottom edge that I could get to, and then hooked the heel bar up in there and pulled it each side to pull it out. If that doesn't work, you can carefully, right in between here, drill a tiny little hole and then run a little screw in there. Do that in 2-3 locations. When it's in place, that screw, you can go in there and use it to catch a hook on, to pry with. For example, this cheap heel bar, I took it to the grinder and put a groove in it specifically for pulling crankshaft seals out of big diesel engines. Hook it on there, and like right here at this bolt, for example, and pull that little screw. If you don't want to run it in so far to cause any damage to a bearing, that's why it's better not to use a self-drilling screw either. It's better to carefully use a little drill bit, or if you must, a self-drilling screw. Get it in there, but you need a screw that the threads will catch enough into the metal of this seal that I just dropped and go through there. You see how grimy that is? It shouldn't really be that way. This is getting heat or something. I have changed the oil in this axle, but I have no idea how long before that the oil was changed. That may have something to do with that. That's why I made sure to check where I stuck the little tool in right here, and then I wiped it out, took the tip of my little tool, got any grime out of there. I'm going to be putting some brake clean on a rag and thoroughly wipe it out, clean it up. I don't have a specific seal driver for this. They are made. They're available. They're generally made of a plastic type material that'll reach over this and fit right on there. I'm going to see if I've got a socket or something, or a piece of pipe that'll fit on the new seal by gauging it with this old one, so I don't take a chance of mucking up anything. If I have to, I can very carefully use a blunt-ended punch or even a block of wood around the edge and gently tap it round, all the way to get in there evenly and flush. So if you hit too hard on one side, it knocks in there like that, it ruins a seal. Same thing happens if you do that with a bearing, even if you have a bearing driver but you're not holding it straight. When I put my yoke back on, it's going to go on the shaft, and right here on this currently filthy surface, before I put that nut on, or on the back side of the nut, you may see it's just greasy. What I do is put a little thin bead of silicone on there, because if oil comes up past these grooves, then it gets over here, it can come past the nut. But if you've already put a little thin bead of RTV silicone, not the stuff for the house, the actual mechanic gasket maker, then it'll seal that up. You don't want it gooped on there, just a nice little thin coating. That's got to be good and tight. If you got the torque wrench to do it, it's supposed to be torqued. I haven't looked up the specs on any of this yet. I'm just trying to get it all clean and the seal in there, and take pictures and little shorter videos of the evidence I see that needs reported to the owner, so further decisions can be made in the future of whatever else may be needed here, and whatever shop worked on it can maybe be brought into a conversation as to why things may have not been done better. So putting the yoke back on, sometimes you'll need to drive it on. You can put a block of like a 2x4 across here or something flat across here instead of banging on the metal. Don't get these messed up so the caps don't go on flush. Use something else so you don't damage things. Maybe a long octagon shaped brass punch I use sometimes. This one, obviously, I'll probably be able to put it on by hand, and then put the nut on, tighten it with the impact, and so forth. If there's a bunch of slack in here, excess rotational slack, in and out slack or anything, check specifications. Get second opinions. I've been asking for second opinions on this one, and some of them match my opinion and some of them don't, so it is what it is. Thank you for your time. Please share these videos if they help anybody. I'll be replacing one slack adjuster back here today, not this one, and two on the front. I've already covered that on this channel, so I don't know that I'll bother to do it today. I got to keep moving. I wish you all a blessed day. Please stay aware and prepared. Use whatever valuable information. I've got playlists put together on different topics from different channels. Most of the maintenance stuff is my own videos, if it's easier to find them than scrolling through the different topics I cover. Thanks again. It's Roy. Well, my handle's Cowboy Roy Rogers, and so's the channels on Rumble, as well as this YouTube and other media. Take care, folks. Look out for your neighbors and work together. There's a lot coming our way, and we better be prepared. So get your spare parts and extra fluids and everything as soon as possible. Thank you all.